Portugal. Portugal, of Portuguese Portugal, Portugal. Officially, the Portuguese Republic, Portuguese República Portuguesa, is a European country in the western Iberian Peninsula. The westernmost point of continental Europe is in Portugal. The country is therefore bounded by the Atlantic Ocean to the west, Spain to the east and north, and the Atlantic Ocean to the south. The islands of the Azores and Madeira, including Porto Santo, belong to the Portuguese territory. Founded in the 12th century, the Kingdom of Portugal initiated the Age of Discoveries in the 15th century and rose to become the first global empire. The kingdom created the first and one of the largest colonial empires with possessions in Africa, Asia, and South America, whose decline was heralded during the 17th century. A military uprising in 1910 overthrew the Portuguese monarchy, forcing King Manuel II into exile. The First Portuguese Republic came into force on October 5, 1910 and lasted until the military coup of General Gomes da Costa in 1926. After that, the country was under the authoritarian dictatorship of António de Oliveira Salazar for more than 40 years. The Carnation Revolution of April 25, 1974 overthrew the regime and opened the way to the democratic Third Republic. She also initiated the end of the longest-standing colonial empire, which was dissolved in 1975. Portugal is a founding member of NATO, 1949, and the OECD, 1948, and a member of the United Nations since 1955. The Council of Europe since 1976, and the Schengen Agreements since 1995. On January 1, 1986, Portugal joined the European Communities (EC) together with Spain, which later became the European Union (EU), and is also one of the founding members of the Eurozone. Portugal was a country of immigration for a long time. Important centers of Portuguese culture in the diaspora are now France and the United States, each home to about 1 to 2 million Portuguese, as well as Brazil, Angola, Mozambique, Switzerland, and Luxembourg. The most important bilateral partner countries are Brazil and Spain. Tourism is a key source of income. With 17 million tourists per year, 2015-7, Portugal is one of the most visited countries in the world, the most frequent travel destinations being the Algarve and the region around the capital Lisbon. The country is known for wine growing, especially for port wine, and the world's most important producer of raw cork. Portugal is a very safe country. In 2022 it was ranked 6th on the Global Peace Index. The United Nations Development Programme ranks Portugal among the countries with a very high level of human development. Despite its comparatively conservative, Catholic society, the traditionally cosmopolitan country has now developed into a very liberal country, which can be seen, for example, in Portugal's liberal drug policy. Introduced in 2001 and recognized internationally, or the comparatively progressive situation of homosexuality in Portugal. Full same-sex marriage in Portugal was legalized in 2010. Nuclear-free Portugal has already pushed its energy transition comparatively far. The country now covers almost two-thirds of its energy requirements from renewable energies. As of July 2021, in November 2021 the last two coal-fired power plants in the country were switched off and green hydrogen or electricity from gas will be generated there in the future. By 2050, the country wants to be climate neutral. In 2020, the Portuguese capital of Lisbon was chosen as the European Green Capital. Prehistory to antiquity. The Roman province of Lusitania in the southwest of the Iberian Peninsula. It is estimated that Portugal was already settled 500,000 years ago by Homo heidelbergensis and later by the Neanderthals, who were descended from Homo heidelbergensis. The earliest evidence of a colonization of westernmost Europe by anatomically modern humans, Homo sapiens, comes from a cave, Lapa do Picareiro, near the Atlantic coast in central Portugal. Stone tools were discovered which have been dated to be between 41,100 and 38,100 years old, Cal BP. Paleolithic rock carvings, which are the most important of their kind in the world, have been dated to between 22,000 and 8,000 years before the present. The transition to the Neolithic took place late, but copper processing caught on particularly quickly, especially in southern Portugal. The first trade relations with other regions of Europe are documented for this period. From 800 BC onwards, Phoenicians established trading posts in the Algarve. From around 600 BC, Greeks founded several small settlements in the eastern and northeastern area. At the earliest, from the 6th to 3rd century BC, the Celts immigrated in several waves, who mixed with the Iberians. In addition to the Celts, the tribe of the Lusitanians is named, who the Romans considered to be particularly well fortified and who should have given the country its name in Latin. The blending of the Celts with the native culture created the Celt-Iberians. Roman Temple of Diana in Evora, one of the best preserved in the country. From 450 BC onwards BC, the southern Iberian Peninsula was colonized by Carthage. Until 206 BC, the Romans succeeded in expelling the Carthaginians. In the course of the Second Punic War, in which numerous Lusitanian mercenaries from Carthage were employed, Rome counterinvaded the Iberian Peninsula and thus led to Romanization. The territory of Portugal was initially administered by the Romans as the province of Hispania Ulterior, from the reign of Augustus under the name of Lusitania, which, in addition to most of today's Portugal, also included other areas in western today's Spain. In north and northeastern Portugal, the Roman conquerors encountered strong resistance, only from 19 BC. The region was considered to be subjugated. Then there was strong Romanization. Cities based on the Roman model, Roman roads, villas and mines were built. With the settlers, vulgar Latin came into the country, from which the Portuguese language later arose, and also Christianity. Roman rule ended during the migration period. Suevi, from 409, Alans, Vandals and above all Visigoths, from 416, invaded and founded short-lived empires in the area of present-day Portugal. Only the Suevi were able to hold out longer, but their empire around Braga was destroyed in 456 by Theodoric II and again in 585 by Leovigild. Moorish rule until the colonial power of Portugal. Iberian Peninsula, around 1036, Portugal did not yet exist. In 711, a Berber army led by Tariq ibn Ziyad defeated the army of the Visigoth king Roderick. By 716, the whole territory of the Visigoth Empire was under the control of the Umayyads, Lusitania probably as early as 713. Al-Andalus and especially the Emirate, later Caliphate of Cordoba, was partly ruled by very capable and successful rulers like Abd ar-Rahman I, Abd ar-Rahman III, or al-Hakam II, and belonged to the most progressive empires of his time. After breaking up into several taifas, most of Lusitania belonged to the Badajoz taifa, the extreme south to Seville and other petty kingdoms. There was an immigration of Berber settlers, mainly to the south of the peninsula due to the climate. Moorish influence on the culture and language of Portugal was strong and enduring. The Kingdom of Asturias was not of interest to the Moors. From here, the Christian reconquista of the territories of what later became Portugal began in the 9th century. In the year 868, during a period of weakness of the Emirate of Cordoba, Portugal was conquered, Prisuria, 879 Coimbra. With the Prisuria of Portugal by Vimara Perez, a first county of Portugal, Condado Portucalense, developed in the area around Porto as part of the Kingdom of Asturias-Leon. Descendants of Vimara Perez family ruled this region until 1071. Braga was rebuilt and the Guimarães fortress was built. In 1071, a revolt by the last count of Portugal, Nuno Mendes, against Garcia, who had been appointed King of Galicia and Portugal in 1065, was put down. Around 1095, the King of Leon enfeoffed Henry of Burgundy with Portugal and Coimbra. A second county of Portugal, also known as Condado Portucalense, was created, which led directly to the establishment of the independent Kingdom of Portugal. The first period after the revolution was marked by the conflict between a more conservative current, General Spinola, and a socialist wing, Captain Otelo Saraiva de Carvalho, within the MFA, Movimento das Forças Armadas. Movement of the Armed Forces, the association of the coup leaders. At first it looked as if the socialist current would win nationalization and land reform took place. The 1976 Constitution defined the transition to socialism as a state objective. when the more moderate Generalines surprisingly clearly defeated Otelo Saraiva de Carvalho in the first presidential elections under the new constitution in 1976, the course was set for the country to return to a parliamentary democracy according to Western European standards. Eanes and the head of the Socialist Party, Mario Soares, head of government from 1976 to 1978 and 1983 to 1985, president from 1986 to 1996, eventually led the country into the European Union in 1986. Portugal is sometimes referred to as the land of poets. In Portuguese literature, poetry has always had a stronger influence than prose. In the Middle Ages, when the Portuguese nation came into being, poetry was widespread in the northwest of the Iberian Peninsula. Outstanding epic and lyrical works were created. While the best-known classical poets are Luís de Camões and Fernando Pessoa, there are a number of lesser-known artists who have had a significant influence on modern Portuguese literature. Prose developed later than poetry, only appearing in the 14th century in the form of chronicles or descriptions of the lives of saints. Fernão Lopes is the best-known representative here. He wrote a chronicle of the reigns of 3 kings of his time. Accuracy of depiction and vivid depiction were the most important things to him. Internationally, modern Portuguese literature is best known, particularly through the works of José Maria Ecija de Queiroz and the 1998 Nobel Prize for Literature, José Saramago. Women are also represented among the country's most important contemporary writers, notably Sofia de Mello Brainer Andressen, Lydia Jorge and Agostina Bessa-Luís. Most recently, Walter Hugo May was able to make a name for himself among young authors. A critical songwriting tradition stems from the fascist Estado Novo under Salazar. The best-known representatives of this protest movement were José Afonso, often called Zica, and Adriano Correa de Oliveira, while representatives of the movement such as José Mario Branco and especially Sergio Godinho are still active in the music scene today. The song Grandola, Vila Morena was written by José Afonso and became a political symbol across the country on the night of the Carnation Revolution and beyond. The musical traditions of the various regions are also constantly being revived and interpreted in a contemporary way, often through the combination of different musical styles. Artists such as Travante, Julio Pereira or Rao Caio, a composer, musician and singer of Portuguese music and fado, have made a name for themselves by absorbing musical influences from Indian music, Goa, former Portuguese colony, and Macau, former Portuguese colony, and from the Arabic region and made a name for itself in North Africa. Architectural styles cover almost all eras of European art history. Monasteries, churches, castles, palaces and state institutions were often designed according to the styles prevailing in Europe, such as Gothic or Neoclassicism. The architect Álvaro Siza Vieira was awarded the Pritzker Prize, as was his compatriot Eduardo Souto de Moura. Other well-known architects were Raul Mesnier de Poncet, a student of Eiffel, Miguel Ventura Terra, Tomás Tavera. In terms of decoration, architectural decoration, Portugal was able to achieve its own national character, mainly through manualism and azulejo art. Tourism. Tourism plays an important role in the Portuguese economy. Portimão Beach. Tourism accounts for around 8% of GDP and growing, with most visitors coming from Spain and the UK. With more than 11.4 million tourists, Portugal was the 30th most visited country in the world in 2016. The Algarve is the undisputed center. 15 sites in Portugal are UNESCO World Heritage Sites, including 2 in the Azores and 1 in Madeira. The 3 Germans Kapka, Burmester and Andressen made a decisive contribution to the development of port wine and the international marketing of port wine from the oldest wine-growing region, the Alto Douro, from the 17th century. The palaces with parks near Sintra and Portugal's largest castle and monastery complex in Mafra were planned by the German architects von Ishtiq and Ludwig. There are opportunities to experience dolphins and whales in the wild in the Algarve, in Setúbal and on the Madeira and Azores archipelagos. Tourism on the Atlantic island of Madeira began in the mid-19th century. The island was one of the favorite destinations of wealthy British travelers. Most of them stayed at Reed's Palace Hotel, built by Scotsman William Reid in 1891. Portuguese is happy and sweet, like a bird language. If there's one part of Europe that's more maritime than another, Portugal is that part, and that belt. And if you haven't been to Portugal, you should definitely make it happen. Thank you for your valuable time you have taken to watch this video.